Thank you for coming. Thank you for coming also all these years before to our program in Santiago. It was a great pleasure and a great honor for us to have you, because I think your philosophy in a way matches perfectly with our philosophy of teaching and part of our culture, Galician culture too. This interview, this conversation is more like an introduction of our own program, your ideas in our own program. Just to start, probably like an introduction is how you would like to define yourself, no? Because you have been a long time professional architect with important buildings in Finland, but you have been also a professor, you have been also a director of museum, and now you have an important career as a writer, no? Some people say you're a philosopher or you're a theoretician, but how would you like to describe yourself?
Well, I see myself as an architect, but not a professionalist at all. I see myself as an amateur, and as an amateur I become interested always in new things, and that is why I have been moving from one thing to the next. I'm often introduced before a lecture as a theoretician. I always object to that. I'm not theorizing anything. I'm describing what I see or what I feel. It's very different from theorizing. And also now that I closed my office 11 years ago, and ever since I have only been writing. I write 10 hours every day, but I don't think I have changed my profession. I'm still an architect. I'm still doing architecture, this time through words rather than lines and forms and spaces. So, and I would also like to say that I have never had a long-term plan for my life. I don't know what I will do after I finish the jobs that I have now.
Then you think it's more like a second phase of your career, or after drawing and building is more like thinking and writing?
No, I think it's just continuation of the same. And I grew up during the war years at my grandfather's farm, and I was the only boy around, so I had a lot of time to watch nature and watch animals and watch what people were doing. That, I think it is that curiosity that keeps me going. I'm curious for all kinds of things, and increasingly for biological things.
Once you mentioned to me, when I asked you why you stopped being a jury in the Pritzker, you mentioned to me that every 7 years you like to change, that you don't like to stay in the same place for too long, because it is like the formation in the relations or in the attitude.
Well, in my view, one can do in 5 years or 7 years all one is able to do. You don't need more time. If you have more time, then you just become lazy. So I want to keep myself going.
It's good. It's a good philosophy. Difficult, no? It's a difficult and challenging philosophy or attitude.
Well, also, for instance, being a director of a school or director of a museum, after 5 years you easily become a problem to others because you gain too much, power, and I don't want that situation. Or the situation where more or less everyone is new to the situation and to the human interaction. That is active, but then after 5 years, the situation becomes sort of stagnated.
And repetitive.
Yes.
Yeah. Now these days we are in a situation almost ecological disaster, no? And seems the architecture, or at least the construction part of architecture, is one of the has been one of the active players.
Yes.
You think we should be responsible for part, architects will be responsible for that part of the situation? Or?
Absolutely. Construction of all kinds is a major part of our ecological problem and use of energy and materials. But much of what is now advertised as green construction or ecological construction is just words. I'm more concerned of the way that architecture nowadays is turning away from being comprehensive cultural practice and become just professionalist exercise and interested in money. I totally disagree with that orientation. I hardly read anything in my own country published or advertised or informed by our architectural institution, because I disagree with this professionalist orientation.
Mm-hmm.
Alvaro Siza is not a professionalist. He's an artist architect and he dedicates his entire personality to the work.
A world of every day more impact of technology, no?
Yes.
And more ephemeral or more less physical. How you think the education of an architect should be focus oriented, or how should be the main focus of education of an architect of the future? No?
In my view, architecture is a deeply embodied practice, and also education of architecture, or all education, should be embodied. What I mean is we should train the person rather than inform the person about something. And that is why the teacher and student relationship is fundamental. And also architecture schools should open up the interests of the future architects to other things. I dislike the idea of architecture being a specialization. It cannot be a specialization because it synthesizes so many things that belong to different categories. So architecture always has to rely on intuition and ethical and aesthetic sense. Ethical and aesthetic are almost synonymous for me. So I support an education which is quite different from the professionalist education of today. And very much should be based on making, working with one's, hands and body and materials and real things. I'm not objecting the use of computers, for instance, in the production phase of architecture, but I objected to in the conceptual early phases of design. I often say in schools where I teach that students should not be permitted to use the computer before they have passed a test, that they have internalized the things they work with. Then when they have an inner imagination, the computer cannot do any harm anymore. But if the computer replaces your imagination, everything goes wrong.
Sure. Do you think there is such a thing like capitalist aesthetics or aesthetics of capitalism?
Yes, this is a notion by my good friend, the German philosopher Gernot Böhme. He has published a book, Critique of Aesthetic Capitalism, and his theory is very simple. The Marxist idea was that production is motivated by need, but in the wealthy societies of today, there is not any more the need in a Marxian manner. So the capitalist world has invented aesthetic fashions to replace the need. Much of what is being built today, almost 100% in the cities, is aestheticization. Aestheticization is a kind of a mask, aesthetic mask, to make architecture desirable, but it has very little to do, if anything, with the real human and existential dimensions of architecture. So I'm against this aesthetic capitalism completely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like humans, no, there is always the need to go back to nature, no?
Yes.
But in a way, architecture, traditional, has denied this relation, no? Or at least in certain architecture, no?
Well, in a way, architecture has been seen as the opposite of nature. But I see architecture as man-made nature, which is a different thing. And it also, when you think of architecture as man-made nature in the sense of being our complete environment in the same way as nature is, then we realize other issues in architecture and other demands. There is also a new perspective for anything that is biological or deals with evolution, and that is the fact that we have forgotten who we are ourselves. We are products of nature. We are products of evolution. I often say to my students, we are all millions of years old, and we have forgotten this huge time perspective in the evolution of man. But many things become more clear when looked in this evolutionary perspective. I recommend to schools of architecture to start teaching biology, because as Alvar Aalto once said, or several times said, architecture belongs to biology.
Mm-hmm. Never too late.
Pardon me?
Never too late.
No.
Never too late. What do you think about the modern movement? It's like a finished or exhausted philosophy, or is a project that's still unfinished?
It's absolutely unfinished.
Mm-hmm.
Unfinished. I have strong confidence in early modernity, the phase in which the arts and architecture were very close to each other, like at the Bauhaus school, the Steel group, Russian constructivists, etc., etc. That was a very fertile moment in architecture and arts. So I believe in that unity, but a lot of negative things have happened in architecture exactly because architecture has specialized into a professionalist practice, almost like the practice of law or engineering. If we think of modernity in its original early phase, I still believe in that. I am a modernist, although I'm nowadays reading cosmology and biology and things like that, but I do it in the modern spirit.
There is the part that has been lost in a way, the moral spirit,
Yes.
that has to be recovered. Now we have a list of words, to suggest wherever is will be like a vocabulary or a dictionary. I don't know.
Yes.
One is atmosphere. What does it suggest?
Atmosphere. Atmosphere. I have written about that atmosphere, and I have been in the circle of architects who have lectured on atmosphere. There are also a number of philosophers who are interested in atmospheres, and modernity at large has been so obsessed with form that we have not noticed that atmosphere often has more importance than form. We live inside atmospheres always, and those atmospheres orient our behavior and feelings and thinking. And the difficulty with atmospheres is that as modern individuals, we are so interested in form, and especially focused form, that we do not understand formless phenomena, and that is what atmosphere is. For an architect, understanding and developing a sensitivity to atmosphere is fundamental.
Also, form is a capitalist product, in a way, because it can be reproduced, sold.
Yes, atmosphere is also used by capitalism.
It's true.
Yes, shop design and department stores, marketplaces. They have produce atmospheres in order to condition human behavior.
Even perfumes, for the specific shops.
That's right. That's right.
Perfumes.
I have also designed one perfume.
Really?
For an international company in New York.
Really? The other word is forest, because I have been I know that in northern countries of Europe, forest has a different meaning than probably in the southern part of Europe.
Well, whenever I feel really tired or nervous or exhausted, if I go to forest, in 10 minutes everything is balanced. Forest has a wonderful atmosphere. And there are now very interesting scientific studies about trees, their communications, and the complexity of life in a forest. For instance, the collaboration of mushrooms and trees and all of that, which completely open up new visions of forest. I'm also interested in this new understanding of forests, that trees communicate with each other and with mushrooms, and we just don't yet know the language, but soon we'll learn the language of trees.
Sometimes we don't even know how to communicate
with each other.
With each other, like with trees.
Yes.
Yeah, but little by little. The other word is hand.
Well, I have written
a lot,
quite a lot on the hand, the thinking hand. And couple of neuroscientists have objected to the title of my book, and they argue that the hands do not think. I argue that hands do think, and we have different kinds of thinking. We have embodied thinking, and then we have cerebral thinking, and perhaps issues of logic, perhaps issues in philosophy, they call for cerebral thinking. But many other things like crafts, sports, farming, forestry, fishing, they are arts of the hand and thoughts of the hand. So we have the idea that thinking is in the brain, I think is a false idea, and quite it has negative consequences. Thinking takes place through our entire body, and for me this idea that it is through our existence that we experience architecture has become very central. I argue nowadays that it's not vision which is the most important sense in architecture. It's not hearing, it's not touching, it is our existential sense. We, like sitting here, we are here as through our sense of existence, and that I think should also be taught to students of architecture.
Yeah, fundamental for education of an architect, no?
Yes.
To learn that. The word room.
Room is a fundamental experience and concept. Through modernity we have learned to think about space, but we have forgotten that more important than space is a room, the unit of space for a specific purpose. And Louis Kahn was one of the architects, modern architects, who emphasized the room. He didn't so much speak about space, it was room. And we could talk the whole day about the problem with the room, but also another parallel problem is association of space and time through modern physics, which was also then adopted to architectural and artistic thinking in the 1920s. And for instance, what's his name, the canonical historian of modernity, the Swiss guy, I'll remember his name in a second. At any rate, he supported strongly the connection of space and time. For my thinking, this is wrong. In human experience, they are different dimensions, and we have been so interested in space that we have lost the meaning and importance of time. Well, as you see, almost any word that you say connects me with with same things, because everything is related.
Sure. And the word corner?
When I was a child, the bad boys were put to stand against a corner. So the corner has that negative connotation for me, psychologically. But corner is also a very central issue in architecture. There are weak corners and strong corners and dark corners and light corners and badly crafted corners and well crafted, etc., etc. In corners, very many things are combined. So there's a lot of information in corners.
It's a critical point always, no? In construction, in design.
Yes,
cities,
yes, and
too.
that is where the information is most condensed. When you look at the wall, there's little information, but when you get to the corner, then there's a lot of information.
Movement, no?
Yes.
And the word character?
The word?
Character.
Well, character is makes me think of atmosphere. Character is a similar non-material quality. It is something which is beyond and above form. Also in humans, each one of us has a character. One can have a friendly character or unfriendly and aggressive character, and we sense that character immediately. And in the same way we sense the character of architecture. It's one of the most difficult things to teach. It's even more difficult to teach than atmosphere.
Yeah.
One of the characteristics of architecture which is, I find, very important in sincerity. Good architecture is always sincere. It tries to speak the truth. It tries to say things clearly and not confuse anyone. But today's architecture does the opposite. It tries to confuse and aestheticize. For instance, turn ethical questions into aesthetic questions. Frank Lloyd Wright, when he was 85, my age, he wrote a beautiful piece on integrity. And he spoke about human integrity, but then also architectural integrity. I very much like this idea, and that is what is often missing in today's buildings is sincerity.
Yeah.
They manipulate. Architecture should not manipulate. It should just offer possibilities, but not close the doors, open them, the doors and windows.
Yeah. No easy. And the word responsibilities, individual or social responsibility, is in a way ethical too.
Yes. I just gave 10 days ago a lecture at the Aalto University in Helsinki, which was entitled Beauty and the Ethical Dimension. These are two adjectives or qualities which have not been much talked about recently in architecture, but so important. And surprisingly, they are strongly connected. Beauty and ethics. There is unethical beauty, which is exactly manipulative aesthetics used in commercial world and political world just as well. Then there is beauty, which is based on truth and sincerity, revealing things rather than camouflaging things.
About Alto.
Well, I knew Alvar Aalto not well, but fairly well. For instance, we traveled in Mexico for a week together in 1960. When I was a young rebel in the 60s. I belonged to a rationalist group of young architects who were critical of Aalto, particularly because at that time his work began to be somewhat classicist or postmodern, and but then quite soon I and we all realized the genius of Aalto, and I read his texts repeatedly because they are very rich texts and include ideas which are very pertinent today, like the ecological issues, the little man, which he proposed as the real client of the architect, not the wealthy, well-to-do person, but the little man. He also said once that architects should always design for the man at the weakest. That's a beautiful idea, because everything that is now, for instance, dealt with as handicapped, it comes naturally when you think of man at the weakest. So reading Alvar Aalto's texts reveal new layers which are very fundamental in today's world. And then I simply just can't understand how he could be so productive and so good most of the time.
He didn't write that much, no?
Well, he wrote rather much, because he was even a almost in an editorial position as a young man.
Really?
Yes, he wrote articles and essays to a number of journals. He even interviewed himself.
Like Woody Allen.
Yes.
Maybe it hasn't been translated into English, no?
They
Because,
well, not all of them. That's true. The most important texts are the Göran Schilt 3 volumes. The big problem is that he, although he was had a doctorate, and he made his doctorate on Cézanne, Paul Cézanne, he didn't use footnotes in his essays on Aalto. And when you read his writings, you don't know whether it is based on truth or it is a tabulation by him.
Yeah, who knows? And the word texture?
Texture.
Texture.
I have become aware of the importance of touch in vision. We touch through the eyes, and our skin understands the touch of the eye, so we have distant touching. Merleau-Ponty even writes beautifully that through vision we touch the sun and the stars. Beautiful idea. Touching is very, very important. In a way, all our senses are modifications of touch. When they are all, for instance, the eye is a specialization of the originary skin of the fetus. The eye doesn't exist as a separate element in the fetus. It is specialization of skin. So skin is an extremely important sensory dimension. For instance, the notion of intimacy, which is important in architectural experience. Intimacy is something that refers to touch, intimate touch.
The last one, I think, the notion of the word of place.
Well, that's what I spoke about last night. Place again takes us back to nature. Every tree, every plant, every animal understands place and seeks places where it can survive best. And place has a physical meaning, a certain physicality of place, but then also a mental meaning. We want to place or need to place our imagination in the same way that we place our body. And the most important place, of course, in human life is home. When you stop for a while to think of what home means for you, it is really fundamental. The home can then expand beyond your house into your city. When I used to travel a lot, almost every second week I flew somewhere to the other side of the world. When I came by taxi from the Helsinki airport to our flat, it was halfway on the taxi ride when I felt I'm at home. And it was a specific place in the city that gave me this experience of being back home.
Mm-hmm. Being protected, no? You know,
being protected and understanding the world. Somehow home is the place from which everything becomes understandable.
Mm-hmm.
It can also be the reverse, that if the home is a place of pain and quarrel and negative things, then it confuses your world.
It has a very strong psychological effect, no, to human.
Home is psychology, purely psychology.
Mm-hmm.
That's what Gaston Bachelard writes about in his books.
Well, very nice. Thank you for this interview, for your time, and for again coming to Santiago so many times.
I hope you can use some of the material.
Sure. All of them, I'm sure. I always learn something talking with you.
Well, I learn myself. I never plan what I do next. The next thing just comes to me, and I start working on it with curiosity. Openness, and for instance, my biological interests now give another perspective to what ecological issues could be and are, instead of just, numbers calculating certain inputs and outputs. Ecology is fundamentally unethical. We need to have ecological ethics, and before we have developed ecological ethics, we don't have any ecological construction.
Nice. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.